Dear honored guests, allow me to welcome you all to this live broadcast and to announce our first online webinar that we are hosting today, and in a great collaboration between AIM ICT and Technology Forum, where we started a series of digital professional webinars that we are happily collaborating and introducing to our dear audience and guests. And hopefully it will add a great value to our participants and audience, where we will be tackling great information and skills from all around the world through hosting international and regional and local experts who will be discussing technology, management, and entrepreneurial trends around the world. So in this great opportunity, we are so happy that we are launching this series of talks and this series of professional technical webinars. We are so happy to welcome a great speaker and a professional, international professional, Mr. Jeff Fellis, who is with us now live through this online webinar to talk about emerging global tech skills gap. So please welcome with me Mr. Jeff Fellis. Mr. Jeff, good evening, sir.
Thank you so much, Mr. Fadi. I appreciate the opportunity, and I appreciate the opportunity to speak with everyone today. As Fadi has shared, I'm actually coming in from the U.S. I live in the southeast of the U.S. Outside of Atlanta, Georgia, and very appreciative to be with Fadi, who I know is based in Amman, Jordan, one of my most beautiful places in the world, and I know others are coming from around the region as well, and we do appreciate the time you're taking with us today.
The pleasure is ours, Jeff, actually. And as we chatted before, we're hoping to welcome you in person in Jordan sometime soon.
Yes.
Thank you for taking the effort despite the time difference between here and there. But we are so happy to have you with us across the seas and through this digital world. I mean, nothing is difficult now and nothing is challenging as much as it used to be. And that's why we're launching such series of professional talks where we can bring from around the world all the expertise to Jordan and to the whole world from Jordan. So we're happy to have you with us, Mr. Jeff. And if you allow me to properly introduce you to our audience who are watching us, to give a quick bio about yourself. Jeff Fellis is the president of Cert Nexus company, and he is responsible for the advancement of his mission in closing the emerging technology skills gap. Within 25 years of experience within the training and certification industry, serving in general management and practice leadership roles, Jeff combines his passion for professional performance with technology to bring change within global organizations while improving the opportunities for individuals in emerging tech. Jeff also serves on a number of industry groups focused on skills development, including the NIST and ICE Working Group, Open Skills Network, Credential Engine Certification, and a Licensure Advisory Group, and IEEE Global Initiative Education Committee. When not working towards improving the lives of others, Jeff can be found doing the same for his own as an avid reader and cycling enthusiastic. And you can connect with Jeff, of course, through his address on LinkedIn. And we're more happy to be a platform to connect our dear audience and participants with Jeff and all other professionals who will be with us in the future. Jeff, I'm going to stop here, actually, and I'm sure that everybody would love to hear you more than myself. So just please, as a start, let us know more about Cert Nexus, this company that you lead, and what does it really work on and what does it offer? And then the floor is yours. Go ahead.
Great. Thank you so much, Fadi. So Cert Nexus, we are a global organization. We provide certifications or credentials in emerging technologies such as artificial intelligence, data science, data ethics, the Internet of Things, and cybersecurity as well. So we work with partners like AIM ICT to train individuals around the globe. We've trained tens of thousands of people across 50 countries globally to date. And those individuals will go on to then certify their knowledge and skills by taking our certifications. And then we'll hold that credential for 3 or more years. So as Fadi shared, we work with organizations, and then we also work directly with individuals, again, all through our partnerships with organizations such as AIM ICT.
Thank you, Jeff. I'm sure it's a great work that you work on, and with a great team behind the scenes always. Just as a start, we're talking today about the emerging tech global skills, and we have discussed some of the talking points that you would love to tell us about regarding the emerging technology trends and the impact actually on jobs of these emerging technology skill trends, and the skills needed for the future, which is the talk of everyone actually, and the talk of the town everywhere regarding these new technology skills and trends, and how professionals must be equipped with such new technologies and let's say digital equipment that they need to be skilled labor for the future and for future jobs. So I'm sure you have it all. So I'm gonna leave the screen for you, dear sir. Now you can, of course, start sharing your slides, and we're all ears.
Great, thank you so much. Again, I've already introduced myself as Jeff Felice. Again, as Cert Nexus, again, we work globally. Our candidates for our credentials have come from these organizations and more. I think what's important, and Fadi alluded to it, is that these technologies are changing business and our personal lives across the globe, right? It's not relegated to public or private, and within private industry, not any specific sector or size of business. It really is all businesses of all sizes, and we'll learn more about that as well. As we discussed, the agenda for today, we'll first define some of the emerging technology trends. We'll discuss how those are impacting jobs, and then how we can go on to prepare skills for the future. And then we will have a Q&A at the end, but please provide any questions you may have throughout the presentation, and we'll answer those at the end of each section as well. So let's first discuss some emerging technology trends. Some of these you may be familiar with, but I want to go through each one of them just to provide the context of, again, this global transformation. It really, if you think about it from a technology standpoint, we're really going through another major revolution of technology. And a lot of this stems from digital transformation, right? Many companies, again, of all sizes and across all sectors, including public governments and ministries as well, are transforming how they do business. This may be replacing older technologies with newer technologies that are more data-driven or autonomous, or going from non-technology processes to digitized processes. And some of this may be automated as well, right? So eliminating, as we'll learn, some of the tasks that we had done previously ourselves are being done now by more autonomous technologies like AI, leaving us to do some of the higher cognitive tasks. The other is the fourth industrial revolution. So with digital transformation, what we're seeing is also this fusion of our digital and physical worlds. So you see this in manufacturing, but also in transportation, in energy, in many other industries as well, where we're starting to go from an operational world where essentially we had mechanical machines that we then many times would actually manage directly or indirectly, but physically. And now we're doing that through technology, and we're automating much of this as well. So think about just in transport, right? With large carriers or delivery companies, in the aerospace industry, again, energy, manufacturing, we're using more and more of this digital technology now to connect to our physical world and essentially become more prescriptive, predictive, and even prescriptive as well. We're also now immersed in the data economy. If you looked back 10 to 15 years ago, the world's most valuable companies, maybe not from a revenue perspective, but from a value of the total value of the company, the majority of those were energy companies or large multinational manufacturers. Today, the world's most valuable companies are technology companies, and those companies are many times either monetizing data or using data to provide services and products that they then monetize. So think about companies like Apple or Google. These companies are built on data, right? Google, think about Google. How they typically monetize is when people search, right? They're monetizing that data of essentially that they've aggregated as well as the searches we perform. Apple, you may think of them as a device company, but again, a lot of Apple services are predicated on the data, right? Think of in all the services that they continue to extend and provide today. And much of this is fueled by emerging technologies. This is a single viewpoint of the managing director from Wikibrands, Sean Moffett. But two things we want to do. First, define what emerging technologies are and the fact that there's a number of emerging technologies. These aren't just the 30 listed here. These are 30 of the more prominent technologies. But emerging technologies are technologies that have not yet realized their full potential. It doesn't mean they're futuristic technologies or technologies that we're not utilizing today. In fact, we are, as we'll learn, we are utilizing these technologies today, but they have so much more opportunity for growth. So as we'll see, as we talk more about artificial intelligence and data science and the Internet of Things and other emerging technologies, we'll see they're being used ubiquitously today, truly globally and across, again, all industry. But we're still in the nascent phase of use of these technologies. We have so much more that we can do with these technologies. And as I shared, emerging tech, it's already here. So ICT, they're a large media company, and they do a forecast for spending on ICT every year. And they, in 2020, there was actually 2021, there was $5 trillion US spent globally on technology, and 1 trillion, fully 20% of that was spent on emerging technologies. So think about that. 1 out of every $5 is being spent on these technologies. And if you look at the growth, most of the growth is coming from the spend on these technologies. So we'll continue to spend more on hardware and software and services and telecom, but 50% of the growth over the next 2 years in ICT spend will be associated with these new technologies. So again, as we spend more on technology, as we'll see, what happens is there's more room or more opportunity for growth with skills associated with those as well. So with that, we're going to pause, see if there's any questions. Fadi, I'll bring you in for any comments that you have on essentially the emerging tech trends before we talk about its impact on jobs.
Thank you, Jeff. This is really exciting, and thank you for such informative dose of information that you have just provided. I'm trying to go through and scroll down through the social media to see if there's any question posted by anyone who's watching us now. So far, nothing yet. I'm sure more maybe would come in the coming an hour, actually, the planned time for this session. Right. If you allow me, Jeff, as we're talking about emerging tech global skills gap, and the word or the terminology or the term itself, when we say artificial intelligence and when we say the fourth industrial revolution and all these trends that came afterwards, maybe not everyone is yet still has the full understanding of what does that really mean. You know, artificial intelligence. We know that this is expanding all our life activities. It's going through all professional life, businesses, all sectors, medicine. Everyone is talking about how we must utilize and invest in AI and utilize it to the humanity, to to everything in our daily lives. So in your own words, maybe if we want to talk about really what does AI means and what comes out of the AI, the artificial intelligence, when we talk about Internet of Things, when we talk about blockchain, when we talk about data analytics and all these topics. Can you say it in your own words so whoever has a confusion about this big term that we always hear, and you might give a clear definition about that?
Yeah, so and if you are confused about what AI is, you're not alone. There was a recent study that was done, and only 11% of people could fully define what artificial intelligence is. So artificial intelligence is the ability for computers to complete human-like tasks autonomously. So what does that mean? Well, you think about your use of Microsoft Excel, right? And if you select a cell in Microsoft Excel, it bolds. If you type 123, 123 displays. That's not artificial intelligence. That's just programmatic logic that we've used now for decades in computers, right? If I do something, then the computer will do. If I take an action, the computer will then take an action based on how it's programmed, right? We call those if-then statements, and those are typically nested. With artificial intelligence, what we're doing is we select an algorithm, and what we do is we train that algorithm on data. And so then that algorithm will actually learn from that data. And so now as we put more data through that algorithm, the algorithm starts to make predictions without human intervention. So now the algorithm is the one making the decisions and determining what the output is going to be. So it's, again, we are using algorithms, but these algorithms essentially are processing information autonomously without human intervention and continue to learn, right? My Microsoft Excel file, the next time I select a cell and I really want to type 456, it doesn't know that I want to do that. An artificial intelligence algorithm may know that, hey, you know what? After 123, 456 comes, and it may display 456. That may be the predictive outcome, right? So it has the ability to learn. And we see artificial intelligence used in our personal lives, right? Every time you perform a search on Google or Bing or like search engine, it's using artificial intelligence. Every time you're using social media, all of those feeds are actually presented to you based on the use of artificial intelligence. If you use a video streaming service, whether it's YouTube, Netflix, whatever it may be, again, they're using artificial intelligence algorithms to actually recommend other videos to you. They're called recommendation engines. So again, and there's many more uses for artificial intelligence, especially as we get into our business lives as well. But the fact is that artificial intelligence is commonplace today, and it is definitely influencing how we interact with technology and each other. Other technologies like Internet of Things, that's where, again, now we have devices that are connected in our physical world. So, for example, I built a new home a couple years ago, and I can set my heating and cooling using an app on my smartphone, right? So my thermostat can now be controlled using that. I can do the same thing with my television through apps, right? And the ability to control. So, right, those are that connected devices that now extends into our business world, where now we're actually connected to large pieces of equipment, potentially transportation, energy, et cetera. And all of this, as Fadi was saying, is fueled by data, right? So the fact is we're able to essentially utilize data to help train algorithms and again, process information. And the same thing with IoT. IoT is generating vast volumes of data. So all of that data needs to be engineered. And that's where we start to see professions such as data analysts and data scientists and data engineers come into being to help us do that.
Interesting. Thank you, Jeff, for making it much easier to and better understand. And I'm sure it's gonna keep on evolving, and more definitions are gonna come every single day. New things are coming in such very and quickly developing, let's say, sector in a way or another.
It is, yeah. The only constant, I think, in technology is change at this point, right?
Absolutely.
And the pace at which it comes, yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. Okay, Jeff, let's go to your next part of your session, the webinar, Emerging Tech and Impacting Jobs. This is very interesting. Let's see what do you have for us.
Yeah. So what we, as we have seen before in other industrial revolutions, is that technology is changing the way we do business. And I always like to use the analogy, if we had this technology 100 years ago and we were all talking to each other, and I said, how many of us are involved in agriculture? The majority of us would raise our hands. 50 years ago, I said, how many of us are involved, or our families are involved in manufacturing? And again, the majority would raise our hands. Now it's how many of us are involved in the use of technology? And again, the majority would raise our hands, right? So we're using technology, but now the types of technology we're using is rapidly changing, as we just discussed. So there's this fear is, are we going to be replaced by machines, right? Are robots going to essentially do everything we do today? And the reality is that we're going to work with machines. We have been doing that with computers, right? But computers are now what we're doing is we shared with artificial intelligence is we're starting to automate more tasks, right? So this is an example of Amazon. If you're familiar with Amazon, they're a large online retailer. And now what they have is actually robots working in the warehouse with people. So the robots are working in tandem with the people to essentially perform some jobs that robots are better equipped to do. But again, people are still interfacing with those robots. And if you look, Amazon's a great example. They've deployed more robots in the past year than any other company in the world. They've also hired hundreds of thousands of people in the same period of time. So again, what we're going to start to see is the reality is we're going to start work more closely with machines. So, but what we've seen is the World Economic Forum predicts that there'll be 97 million new jobs created by the data and AI economy. But you can see on the left-hand side, the graphic shows, hey, there's going to be increasing demand for jobs like data analysts and scientists, as we just discussed, and AI and machine learning engineers. There's going to be for information security analysts and Internet of Things specialists, right? Some of those technologies we talked about. But there'll be a decreasing demand for jobs like data entry clerks, other tasks that can be automated in accounting, some factory work, and some other general and operational work as well. And Microsoft actually predicts that over the next several years, that we'll actually see an increase of almost 150 million new jobs. And these jobs, again, will be digitally enabled, right? So we see almost 100 million new jobs in software development, over 20 million in cloud and data roles, like data scientists, et cetera. 20 million around artificial intelligence, right? Machine learning engineers and data and analysts. Over 6 million jobs in cybersecurity. In fact, right now, currently across the globe, there's over 3 million open cybersecurity jobs. And another million that will be associated with the privacy and trust of data. So again, we're going to see a transformation that we've seen, again, when, using that agriculture example, right? We saw, tractors replace horses. And then we saw bigger tractors that could process many rows and et cetera, replace smaller tractors. And now actually John Deere just actually introduced their first autonomous tractor, right? A tractor that's going to be able to move through agriculture fields without an operator in the cab. So again, this is also, but at the same time, it's creating opportunities, right? John Deere now has machine learning engineers that they never employed before. They had data scientists that they weren't employing before, and other engineers as well. So really what we should take away from this is, again, some jobs will be replaced and many more new jobs will be created. So there'll be millions of jobs created more than will be lost due to AI. But for the most of us, essentially the tasks we do are going to change. So again, I think about it when I first entered the workforce, computers were just being introduced into the workplace. And there were certain things that I was still doing manually on pen and paper. And now, then I moved to Excel. Now Excel is able to automate some of those tasks that I was previously doing. And now we moved out of Excel into other business analyst or intelligence tools like Tableau and et cetera, right? So the fact is that we're going to start to continue to see the same thing with AI. But what we have to understand is most organizations have skills gaps. So if you're an employer attending, you're probably feeling this today. More than 70% of organizations surveyed by Gartner said they haven't mastered, their employees haven't mastered the skills they need for their job today. And if you're a prospective employee, what you have to recognize is, or currently employed, is that you can continue to upskill, and we'll learn more about that, to actually improve your employment opportunities within your organization. Or if you're someone looking for a job, there's many jobs that are going to require these skills as we move forward in the future. And here's just a few statistics around this growing skills gap. And we talked a little bit about this with the WEF and Microsoft as well. But again, ISC squared, which produces the CISSP security exam, right now, there's almost 3 million, again, additional professionals that are needed to defend critical assets, right, in cybersecurity. 80% of organizations don't have the skills required to ensure that their IoT solutions work as they're intended, right? Essentially, 56% of senior AI professionals say that there's a lack of talent and qualified workers, which is the single greatest barrier to implementing AI. And data science is in the top 20 fastest growing occupations and has projected to grow 31% over the next 10 years. So think about that, 31% growth in a single profession. So again, the fact is that there's existing skills gaps, and these skills gaps are only growing because we need more and more professionals that can do these types of jobs. And it's not the first time we've encountered where the idea that technology is going to transform employment or the skills that we need to be successfully employed, right? If you go back to the 1980s, it was the advent of the personal computers, right? People were learning how to operate in DOS, for those who are old enough to remember, and applications like Lotus 1-2-3, and then eventually Microsoft Excel. In the 1990s was networking. It was the advent of Novell NetWare and Windows NT, which was replaced by Windows Server. In the 2000s, it was about web design and development, right? The web really fueled the growth of our global economy and the associated skills needed to that. In the 2010s, paired with mobile, it was cybersecurity and virtualization and cloud computing. And the 2020s is really going to be these data-driven or data-enabled technologies. So again, as we start to look at the skills that we're going to develop, we want to develop them around these technologies. And I don't even want to say technologies of the future, because they're the technologies of today, but provide the most growth in the future as well. With that, we'll pause again for questions and any other commentary, Fadi.
Thank you again, Jeff, for very interesting and exciting information that you are sharing here. Well, actually, yes, allow me before I do comment. We have a question here from one of the audience, my friend Amir. He says, hello, gentlemen. Can we say AI equals machine learning? Maybe this question is relevant to the first part where you were defining artificial intelligence. So he is wondering, can we say AI is equal to machine learning? And what's the difference if not?
Yeah, machine learning is a type of artificial intelligence. So artificial intelligence is an umbrella concept, a technical concept. And then the two most often employed types of AI are machine learning and deep learning. And some will say deep learning is a subset of machine learning, but it's starting to grow, where some are saying it's starting to separate itself. So some do equate AI and machine learning, but it's not inaccurate, because machine learning is the most often used type of AI. But there is two types of AI, being machine learning and deep learning as well.
I see. Okay. Thank you, Amir, for your question. I hope this answer has really replied to your inquiry. If you allow me to comment, Jeff, regarding what we have been discussing so far, the way you presented actually the fear of being replaced or jobs being replaced by machines, this is really a fear, and a huge concern and worry by a lot of people, where they share globally actually such kind of a fear and a worry, and I think this is something understood. Let's say the fear of change is always there, but when it reaches when it creates such a fear, creates resistance, maybe that's the problem here. So how do you propose, or what do you recommend in regards of managing the fears? Mitigating the fears, let's call, because it's a risk at the end, a risk that creates resistance, pushback, fight back, towards all what's, even the technology is moving on forward, whether you catch up or not. And this creating this gap that you were mentioning regarding digital skills for us as people. But what do you have as a recipe, for example, to overcome such fears? It's not only promises about the new jobs that gonna be really emerged, which we always read about, and how we should be supported by machines, not replaced by machines. So any philosophy you have here regarding managing and mitigating fears of machines taking over?
Yeah, I always say that you can help to reduce fear, or if not mitigate it altogether, through knowledge, right? Because fear is typically of the unknown, right? Or a lack of understanding of what really is likely to happen. So the first thing I would say is that, going back into history, this isn't the first major revolution of technology that has changed the jobs that we perform, right? I liken to agriculture, but even manufacturing in the U.S. in the early 1970s, there was over 70 million people in the U.S. employed in manufacturing. Today, it's less than 20 million. So what happened with those 50 million people? Well, there was not only 50 million, but hundreds of millions, over 100 million jobs created in technology. So many of those individuals that were working in factories are now working in offices or virtually, right? And so I think the first is understanding that, this has happened before. It's going to happen again. So that to help reduce some of that fear. And the second is gaining knowledge, right? So attending sessions like this to understand what are the technologies that I need to learn to be competitive in the job marketplace. So people want me to be employed by them, and I can have a successful career. So it's learning what technologies are going to be changing industry.
True. Thank you. Actually, this is what we're always keeping on telling and sharing and let's say encouraging our students in schools and universities, graduates, undergraduates, unemployed, who are aggressively seeking jobs and so on. We keep on telling them that you need to really be skilled and employable candidate, and you cannot reach that level if you do not really work on your skills, and specifically the digital skills, where it is highly needed. Beside language and soft skills, you need to be equipped with a great pack of digital skills, so you can at least overcome any gap that you have, so you can catch up with any new trends that are needed. Right. Just a quick example that I should share it here with you and our dear audiences, and whoever is watching. We all know about the coding and how it is really emerging and evolving in a very fast-paced and I mean, it's everywhere. In Jordan, we have a kind of a campaign or a national initiative that's called 1 million Jordanian programmer or coder. Okay, mm-hmm. This is the objective, to reach that level, and this initiative is supported and led by Crown Prince Foundation, with a lot of supporters here and there, and they work with all schools, all universities, all youth, just under the belief that really our students should be equipped with such digital skill for our total belief how much it's needed in the future, and how many jobs really needs coders that can work from Jordan here in the Middle East globally.
Right.
So this is just a real example where we must really overcome such kind of gaps in the skills. Thank you, Jeff. Sorry again, but your talk is exciting and creating a lot of engagement here. I'll leave the screen is yours now for your next part.
Great, and that's a great introduction to our next topic, which is skills for the future. And a couple things. First, I want to applaud that initiative by the Jordanian government to have 1 million coders. The fact is programming, the ability to program is going to be like having a second or third language in the future, right? It's something that is going to make you competitive in the workforce, and for many jobs will just be a basic necessity. The other thing that I do want to note too about Jordan and in other countries throughout the region is that you have youth on your side. If you look at the average age of an American, it's typically 10 to 15 years older, depending on the country throughout the Middle East. So the fact is that Fadi shared is that the U.S. and other countries are always looking for more talent. And that talent's not going to always come from the U.S. So the opportunities that are going to be available are only going to increase, especially as we see diversification in industries and the continued global future of our economy. So let's talk about skills for the future. The first thing is you don't have to be an IT professional to become an IT professional. A lot of individuals think I've had to study computer science or networking or something at a college or university. But the fact is the majority of the people in IT today came from non-IT backgrounds. Some of them did study computer science or type topics in a college or university, but many of them have gone on to professional development with organizations like AIM ICT to develop and build skills. So it's, we're looking at science and technology and engineering and math students. Those are changing careers, whether it's early in the career or midstream. Those that are coming from different backgrounds, and really the next generation, right? Again, what Jordan has is and it's an asset is youth, right? And so using that and looking at the next generation, having 1 million coders that are able to, again, produce technologies within Jordan, but also for global consumption as well. And again, education, although it's continuing again to focus on more technology, is still not helping us solve the skills gap problem. There's just not enough people that are studying STEM topics in their university or college studies. So, and it's okay, right? Because we have these alternative means beyond our formal education to learn these technologies. So if you're an employer and thinking, hey, in the US, for example, this is here, 10% of STEM graduates are in computer science. And it's just not meeting the need in the US. We literally have, again, millions of jobs that are open, and we're essentially taking people, again, I'm a great example of that. I studied English literature in university, and I was self-taught early on in technology, and then I was able to, again, apply those skills further in technology. And there's a lot of people like me out there. And this is done through skilling. So these are corporate HR or learning and development terms that are used, but I wanted to share them because it's really talking about sometimes reskilling, the process of learning skills so you can do a different job, right? So today, maybe you are working in the finance team, but tomorrow you're going to be a financial analyst or a data analyst, right? And learning new skills to do that. it's upskilling, right? The process of learning new skills to do the same job, right? So maybe I am already a financial analyst, but now I'm using more autonomous technologies driven by AI, more data driven, maybe even connected to the Internet of Things, right? So I have to upskill myself so I understand that. And then there's the new skilling, right? The process of learning new skills for future jobs, right? So I used Amazon as an example here. Amazon is now doing two things, new skilling and outskilling, realizing that, hey, all those people working in warehouses may not be working in warehouses 10 years from now. So let's give them the skills that they're going to need in the future, right? So whether it's around, sustainable energy or autonomous vehicles, electric vehicles, right? One of the jobs, one of the fastest growing jobs in the U.S. is mechanics to work on electric vehicles or autonomous vehicles. And these are high paying jobs, right? 6-figure jobs in the U.S. And these are not skills that we needed, 10 years ago. And now they're becoming prevalent and taught often. So why do we validate skills and knowledge? Why do we take these certification exams and other credentialing exams? And because there's some benefits to employers as well as employees, right? The benefit to the employers is they get people that they know have these, we've validated that they have these knowledge and skills. And for employees, typically employees that receive certifications, they're often more employed and they typically are making more money. And we can see this on here, but in addition to being employed and money, you have greater confidence, right? If I've validated that I have these skills and knowledge and I can prove that to someone, I have greater confidence in doing my job. I typically have more respect for my peers, right? Because they can see that I've invested in myself and I hold these certifications. I have higher job satisfaction, right? I can do my job better, but I typically derive more joy or happiness from it. And I can typically work without less supervision, right? Which allows my manager to do other things and me to do things more autonomously and get work done. And what we have to also understand is, depending where if you're an employer, you have to think about your organization of who needs knowledge versus who needs knowledge and skills. Is you're an individual, you may be a product manager or a project manager or a manager of people, and you need knowledge, right? You need to understand these technologies, but you may not need the skills to develop them. But then there's the technologists who actually not only need to know about these technologies conceptually, but how to actually develop them and deploy them and maintain them. So through our partner in AIMICT, we have courses that are for business professionals that, again, are non-IT professionals that develop awareness. We were talking about AI earlier, right? So what is artificial intelligence? The types of artificial intelligence like machine learning and deep learning. And then our approaches, right? Within machine learning, we have things like approaches called supervised and unsupervised learning. And then with the same thing within deep learning, we have artificial neural networks and we have feed forward and recurrent neural networks. So we start to learn about those. We learn conceptually how those are used with technology. So how is AI used in a search engine? How is it used in robotics, autonomous vehicles, natural language processing? And then we talk about their business applications. So how are we using them in different industries or different functions across an organization? So how are they used in agriculture or transportation or in energy? And how are they being used in marketing and sales versus potentially supply chain management, et cetera? So having that knowledge, and that should go across, that should be everyone in the organization should have that knowledge. The skills are going to go beyond that. And now what we're going to do is do things like actually select an artificial intelligence algorithm. We're going to train it. We're going to then actually deploy that in our organization. Or again, we're going to engineer data. We're going to extract it and transform it and load it. Right, so that's knowledge and skills, and again, that's typically for our data, IT, AI professionals. So again, but everyone needs that knowledge. We're going to give more skills to those who are going to go on and develop it. And I left this in, although it's focused on cybersecurity. This is actually another study that was performed, and I just wanted to show this because again, the majority of people that are employed in cybersecurity today, based on the survey by ISC Squared, were from other disciplines. They weren't people that were in cybersecurity, but what did they have? They had really good problem-solving capabilities. They are able to communicate. They're analytical thinkers. They can actually collaborate with others, work within a team, and they're very attentive to detail. Those characteristics, along with the learned knowledge and skills, allows someone to be really good at cybersecurity. So, and again, you will see similar types of characteristics in others, that are, would make someone a good machine learning engineer or a data scientist or an IoT engineer. So again, the fact is although you don't have to be classically, as we say, classically trained or educated as a professional, you can pick up these skills as you move on as well. And we have to realize it's training for life. Fadi has mentioned a couple times now, and I agree that, that technology continues to move so rapidly. And, the shelf life of our knowledge has shortened. And when I entered my career, I could learn something in an application and know that application probably wasn't going to change for 3 years. Now, with these iterative development cycles, if my knowledge is good for 3 months, that's great, right? I'm continuously re-educating myself. And so we start with formal education, but we need to continuously educate ourselves, whether it's on-the-job training, professional development, training with partners like AMCT, and continuously to, again, reskill, upskill, new skill ourselves so we can continue to be relevant in the jobs we're doing today, as well as jobs of the future as well. And always, if you need some advice, right, obviously, if you're employed, speak to your manager or someone that can help you to better understand the skills needed in your organization, both today and in the future. Reach out to your trusted training solution provider, right? Fadi in their organization. These folks, this is what they do every day, right? They understand what are the skills that are in demand and what are what's the knowledge and skills you can gain to map to those job roles. Also, review the skills listed in job descriptions, right? So many people say, hey, I'd like to be a machine learning engineer. Well, go review a job description. See what the skills that you need to do that. See the training and certification that maps to that, working with your solution provider. And I always say network, network, network. The fact is the more you network, the more people you get exposure to, the more you'll understand what these professions are, right? If I want to become a data scientist, network with data scientists. Even if you're not a data scientist, network with them and say, hey, listen, I want to pursue this profession. I want to learn more about it, and start to network with individuals that can help you get there. As we alluded to earlier, Cert Nexus, we provide a variety of training programs mapping to micro-credentials at the business level and technical certifications, high-stakes certifications at our build and secure level. Again, these are all offered through AMICT. So please contact Fadi and team. If you're a business professional and need, again, that knowledge-based learning, whether that's in AI or data science or IoT, in cybersecurity, right? We believe that everyone should have cyber awareness across an entire organization. We're also releasing a new product around data ethics, right? So how do we not only use data, but how do we do that ethically? So we're producing responsible technology solutions. And then on the build side, in the secure, we're looking at how do you securely design and develop code, right? So if you have 1 million coders, it's like creating 1 million drivers. Well, they need to know the rules of the road, right? How do I not only produce code, but how do I produce code that's not going to be create a vulnerability from our organization so that a hacker would be able to exploit and then access data, right? So it's really, really important that you not only learn to code, but how to do that securely. As well as for our development data professionals, if you have those programming skills and you're learning programming languages like Python, Amazon is a great example. Amazon is actually training all of their developers on artificial intelligence because they believe artificial intelligence will be the future for programmers. If they're not programming artificial intelligence themselves, they'll be utilizing it in some capacity. So learning artificial intelligence. Almost all programmers are programming solutions that leverage data, right? So understanding data science, and again, how to wrangle data, and then how to engineer it for use. As IoT practitioners, right? We're in this ever more connected world, right? I shared that I built a home a couple years ago, And the home came not only with a connected thermostat and a connected television, but also my stove is connected, right? If I wanted to, I can turn my stove on while I'm sitting here talking to you through an app, right? I don't know why I would do that, but I can do it, right? So the fact is everything's becoming more and more connected. And then we also look at the ability to secure that with security professionals, right? The ability to help prevent incidents from occurring and being able to respond to them when they do occur. So in summary, right, emerging technologies we've learned are transforming business, governments, and our personal lives, right? And it's only happening more rapidly, and it's only going to continue to do so. Emerging tech is also remapping the jobs landscape, right? So the jobs we know today, many of them may exist, but are going to change, and some of them are going to move towards obsolescence, and we'll have a whole set of new jobs that we may not even really know about. For example, we have a course that helps people become AI or data ethicists, right? Who really was talking about a data or AI ethicist 5 years ago? Today, it's one of the fastest growing professions in technology, and without having a need for a deep understanding of technology. And we also need to prepare our organization ourselves with the skills for the future, right? It's this continuous learning. There's many different, some people call it K to gray and, lifelong learning, continuous learning, whatever. But the fact is we can't stop learning until, we retire from the workforce. But even then, right, even for personal interests, I'll continue to learn. So it is truly lifelong learning. And so with that, we are moving into our Q&A portion of our presentation today.
Perfect. Thank you, Jeff. This last part was even more exciting than before. It is really exciting. Thank you so much for such valuable webinar and the amazing dose of information and knowledge and eye-opening, actually, parts that you have shared. Allow me, before I do comment, to welcome some comments and questions here that we have. Allow me to introduce to you a great leader and Director General and a school principal, Ms. Lynn Madanat, who is participating with us here. She's the Director General of a group of schools in Jordan, the Greek Orthodox Patriarch Schools, and she's an education expert as well. And she's raising a question after she's saying this is a crucial topic about the AI that you are sharing with us, Jeff, and asking what are the basic tools needed for change in IT curriculums in school? This is a very important question because this is a major objective for Ms. Madanat that she's working on in her schools, how she can really have really a useful, technical, friendly curriculum for IT. Sometimes you would have a lot of IT curriculums and books and topics, but it's all theoretical. It's not practical, and maybe it's not even useful for anything. And actually, we learned this from our children and little students and adolescents and seniors actually in schools who know more than us. And would really make fun of some certain topics and curriculum. Like, we don't learn from those books. We learn actually our way or through social platforms and Google and LinkedIn and YouTube, where they really learn whatever they want. So how do you really recommend that IT curriculum should be developed, and in what manner?
Yeah, I think that the single largest challenges that schools have today is the pace at which technology is changing, right? You used to be able to, and even today you can write a history book, and that history, although we can continue to analyze it and learn from it, that history book, will stay relevant for, years in a classroom, where technology curriculums can literally change over the course of the year and months. So I serve on several committees, as we discussed at the top, with IEEE and some that are U.S. based, IEEE being globally, and then some that are U.S. based as well. And we have this conversation, and really what we started to break it down into three things. One is awareness, right? the concept of artificial intelligence, and how it's utilized, which we talked about in search engines and recommendation engines, et cetera, those are universal concepts that will evolve but won't radically change. And so what we've discussed is that we should provide that AI awareness to everyone. Same with cybersecurity awareness, and also about data privacy. Right, many people are using social media and don't understand how their data is being used, or other ways as well. So that base levels awareness. Then as you start to develop skills, what we look at are those fundamental skills, again, are not that they won't change, but they change less rapidly than the more advanced skills. So as you start to change those fundamental skills, again, build curriculums around those skills that, for AI, for example, the selecting an algorithm, training an algorithm, et cetera, those types of things, those basic skills, the technologies will shift, but it will take time to shift. And then there's the more advanced, when you start to get into your STEM specific studies, those curriculums, in all honesty, those curriculums are going to have to be dynamic. You're going to have to look at teaching, built on top of those base skills, but looking at, what's relevant. So as teachers build their curriculums, they may have to change or rebuild them on if not a semester, an annual basis. So I think that is going to be the expectation of the future is to be more dynamic with your curriculums, especially as you get deeper into them.
Thank you, Jeff, for your answer, and thank you, Lynn, for being with us and sharing such an important question. Yeah. And wish you all the best in your mission at your schools, and I'm sure you're going to achieve great results for the great skills and passion you have and the great team surrounding you. Allow me also to welcome our dear colleague here, Ashraf Husseini, the Executive Director for today's session by the Arab International Society for Management Technology. Ashraf is also online with us, and he'd like to raise a question. He says, hi, will there be a chance that machine can one day overpower humans? And is there any controls that governments can do to prevent that? Maybe many of us share such kind of a question. Or I don't know, is it imaginary question, or is it something we dream about? But actually many movies talked about that, and I can recall Will Smith in I, Robot, and and nowadays we think, oh my God, that might come true. What do you have for us in this regard, Jeff?
Yeah, so I'm going to answer this in two parts. The first part is that artificial intelligence today, we've achieved what we call artificial narrow intelligence, or ANI. And this is where even the most advanced algorithms, deep learning algorithms, can really do one thing really well. So that's why we call it narrow intelligence. So if you look at the most advanced algorithms, they're able to typically process language, and that's what they do. Or some will process images. But algorithms, even these most advanced deep learning algorithms, are not multifaceted. So they couldn't control a robot and be able to disseminate what photos are of cats, for example. So as we move to artificial general intelligence, and some think we may achieve that in the next decade, some think we may never. Artificial and general intelligence is where a machine would have the equivalent to human intelligence. And so again, whether we get there or not, we don't know. And then there's artificial superintelligence. And artificial and superintelligence is what we see in the movies, like iRobot, right? Where machines have greater intelligence than humans. And some say we will never get there, and some say we hope we'll never get there, right? Because we'll become subservient to machines, right? Which we don't want to be. And that is, again, the second part of the question. I think we have to answer with even artificial narrow intelligence. So even if we don't achieve general intelligence or superintelligence, where machines are superior to humans, we still have to think about how these artificial autonomous systems are working, and especially as we talk about they're used in weapons of war, right? Can a potentially, and we have this technology today where drones essentially are piloted by artificial intelligence. Well, what if that algorithm starts to make decisions about what a potential target is? Right now, there's fail safes in process where they can't be overridden. A human actually has to take action. But again, I think we have to start asking these ethical questions about the use of the technology, and it's not just in weaponry, right? We're using it to select people for jobs. We're using it to determine who may receive a loan, a bank loan, right? So we have to ensure that these technologies are being used in an ethical way. And again, there's a whole profession around data and AI ethicists, but also teaching our engineers as well. And going back to Ms. Lean's question earlier is, in addition to teaching about these technologies, we need to teach students at a very young age. And that's one of the things we do with IEEE is talk about, hey, if you're teaching someone how to use a technology, you need to teach them how to do that in an ethical and humane way.
Absolutely, and I would draw many lines under ethical.
Yeah.
This is an important topic that we've been discussing over decades, and maybe it must be discussed further and further, and an evolution should be happening here in the business ethics, where we used to discuss business ethics just as a working environment, something related to harassment, workplace violence, green operations, environmental care, and so on. But now with the social platforms and all such kind of online operations and activities, and the social media that overtaken all our lives, and I mean ethics, and I'm sure that there are many initiatives here and there that are coming up every now and then, requesting and asking and demanding and advocating, and how you can do some kind of certain norms that you would abide to, because nothing is really controlling it in a way or another. I don't know your philosophy in such a topic, because it is controversial between many parties here, whether it should be controlled, whether it should be not. Even in some businesses, I mean, there are some more ethics in regard to fraud, cyber fraud. Now, this is another topic that's happening in fraud and corruption. The more high tech we are becoming in all our operations and lives, I mean, the more breaches are, and the more new trends are that we need to have some kind of guidelines and measures to control. Maybe you'd like to comment on that now or later, but I want to give priority to our audience here, if you don't mind, Jeff.
Yeah, sure. Yes.
Allow me to share a question by our friend here, Mr. Nizar Musa. Mr. Nizar is raising a question saying, since artificial intelligence is gonna expand in the future, do we expect some jobs to decay as it's recommended to advise our children study some certain majors? What do you have to say in that regard, Jeff?
Yeah, and it's there's studies show that the major or the course of study that a student selects, especially at the university level, determines their job outcomes, more so even where the school they attend, right? So in the U.S., we have some elite schools at Harvard, Yale, et cetera. That may be the exception, but more often than not, it's whether does someone study to become a machine learning engineer as opposed to someone studying to become a social scientist. There's more jobs for machine learning engineers, and they're paid at a higher rate, right? So so the course of study will have an impact. At the same time, we see that those, what we call in the U.S., and I apologize for making it U.S.-centric, but the liberal arts studies, right? I was an English major. I studied English literature. Well, what did that provide me, right? It provided me analytical thinking skills. It provided me communication skills, both written and verbal. It also provided, some other skills that maybe a science or STEM education couldn't have provided or wouldn't have provided in a similar fashion. So we don't want to discourage students from studying the arts, or various pursuit of social programs or social degrees. But at the same time, we have to be realistic and understand that if they study those courses of study, they may have to supplement that with some of these other skills. A great example is in AI ethics or data ethics. A lot of our leading data ethicists or AI ethicists today studied philosophy, right? 15 years ago, you graduate with a PhD in philosophy, and if you weren't teaching philosophy, your job prospects weren't that as good. Now, if you have a PhD in philosophy, you're likely to be considered for a job at Google. So I think what we have to do is understand how those courses of study, how they work towards the jobs of today and the future. So if someone's studying philosophy, open them up to the idea of being potentially not only a professor, but also an ethicist as well.
Thank you again, Jeff, for such valuable information you're sharing and great answers. I hope, Nizar, my friend, you received what you're looking for of an answer from Jeff here. And please don't hesitate to keep on contacting us for any question you have in mind. Allow me to go back to Musleen Madanat, who's watching us and interestingly keeping an eye to an ear to our discussion, and that shows her passion actually in what she does on a daily basis. Regarding the ethics here, I'm just looking for the comment that she just shared with us. Okay, here you go. Teaching technology in an ethical way needs to be really emphasized. Very important as an ethical guidelines, code of ethics, initial guidelines or code of ethics. That comes back to the point I was just sharing with you, Jeff. Yeah. And Musleen is actually also emphasizing on the importance of ethical guidelines or code of ethics regarding the use of technology or teaching even technology. Maybe that would be part of the curriculum, actually, how you need to have a code of conduct or ethical baselines when you practice technology in the future. What do you have to tell us about that?
Yeah, and this is something that's a great interest to me as well. So you mentioned I served on a committee with IEEE, and it is regards to the education of ethical AI. So what we're doing is we're working with educators around the world. Ms. Lean, I would please, if you're interested, we are looking for more committee members. If you're interested, please reach out. We're always looking for people, and we are truly represented around the world. But we are in this conversation, which is we need to make sure that everyone has general awareness of how to use AI ethically. And then for our machine learning engineers and other data-driven professionals, that they need this education as well, right? They're developing the solutions, and they need to understand that when they're developing these solutions, that they're doing it so they're not biased, right? They conform to the ethical norms. Think about autonomous vehicles, right? Autonomous vehicles are making decisions literally every millisecond, right? And if they're presented with essentially they're going to potentially hit a person or hit a dog. What's the, there's an ethical question that we have to ask there. What does the car do, right? But even just in everyday, use of these technologies, we're using them again, I said, for hiring people, right? And so are we using this? So are we just propagating some of the biases that our data had from previous engagements, hiring engagements, or are we able to reduce that and start to have more inclusive hiring? So it's a really important question, and I agree, Ms. Lean, that we really need to emphasize this and teach it. And I think, Fadi, to your earlier question is that we do need to regulate this. What we don't want to do is impact innovation. We want to allow for innovation, but what we also want to allow for is humane technology that really benefits all and not just a few.
Absolutely, Jeff. I cannot agree more. Thank you so much for such a valuable session and a webinar that has really tackled an important topic. Thank you for all the audience who participated with us and shared their interest and good care and raised really valuable questions. I guess at the end of this webinar, of course, before I leave the closure for you, my dear Jeff, I would love to say that I personally learned a lot from today's webinar. It's a great pleasure to meet you virtually. I don't know, is it virtual or is it real?
Right.
That's another controversial. It is real. It is not virtual. I mean, this is real. So it's online, let's say. It's a pleasure meeting you. Hopefully to have you sometime here in Jordan.
Yes.
Thank you so much for your valuable time. And I'll leave the final words for you.
Yeah, and I want to thank for the opportunity and thank everyone for the really useful and interesting questions. It helps further my own learning as well. And I do appreciate the opportunity to join virtually or digitally, but do hope to be able to do this in person in the near future as well. So thank you for the opportunity. And I guess in final statement is really, we have a great opportunity in front of us with these technologies, and looking forward to preparing ourselves and other individuals to meet these opportunities, and really to create not only useful but beneficial and responsible technologies.
Jeff Fellas, digital transformation expert and the president of Cert Nexus, thank you so much for your time and such valuable webinar under the topic Emerging Tech Global Skills Gap. It has been a pleasure having you with us here through this webinar that is being hosted by the Arab International Society for Management Technology in partnership with the Abu-Ghazaleh Knowledge Forum. I myself, Fadi Dawood, the moderator here and the executive director of TAG Knowledge Forum, has been a great pleasure having you with us, sir. Thank you for all the audience who have been watching us and participating with us over our social platforms, and who are actually listening and hearing this webinar on Abu-Ghazaleh radio station for business and culture. Everybody, this is to say thank you and wish you a great evening, and goodbye.
All right, thank you. Goodbye.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.